Well, you know, from time to time, I do check up to find out what Bradford Ferguson is actually saying when he's not on this show. Sometimes it even comes across my feed on X. But Bradford, today I noted that well, today, I guess maybe the last couple of days, you've been trying to put together an experiment on 12.5.1.5.7.9.11.7, something like that. I don't know. I think we need to shorten this thing down just a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but tell us about the experiment. Tell us about where we are on the experiment. Tell us about your plans. I'll just let you take over.
So we're talking about Tesla's new full self-driving software, and I got a version of 12.5 a couple of weeks ago. Might have been, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, and got on our Model X, and it drove really good.
I
Just
remember
so
you saying that it
smooth.
was like a chauffeur.
Yeah, it's like a chauffeur for sure. It's so smooth, it's shocking, and it just like puts a smile on your face. And I know people are, maybe tired of influencers saying, "Oh, it's so smooth," or this one's mind blowing or whatever. So I had an idea earlier in the week.
Let me
My
ask
mom,
you a question though. Let me ask you a question first. Did the have you been in the X a lot over those 3 weeks? Does it continue to impress? Have there been issues that would cause you to go, well?
generally it's very impressive. I don't know if I had a safety critical intervention. I may have. Um, but there's some nagging issues as far as like this school bus with the red stop sign out and the red lights on. Most states you're expected to stop even if you're going the other way, and I think most people will get upset if you don't stop for it.
I even saw an article today where they got they in some state first day of school or something, and they decided to go after the people that weren't abiding, and I think they wrote like 4,000 tickets in one day.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So it's not stopping for that. I also had a fire engine where and the siren was going off and the flashing lights, and it didn't yield for that. And that was on the hardware for Model X on 12.5. So they need to add that to the data, or they need to add more examples or something
Something.
with that. Um, it tried to drive through a construction zone tonight. It did find a gap where it wasn't like, going over cones or anything, but I knew like it was closed ahead, and it was like clearly marked, and there were a ton of cones. So it went to the right and then saw this big gap where there weren't cones, and like the construction people could enter there. They were already done with work. This was right before I joined. Um, so like that, in that case, it should have identified that that road was closed, but for whatever reason it didn't. So, there's still more work to do, but I literally cannot feather the accelerator and letting off the accelerator to such a fine degree as
Oh,
12.5 does now. Like that's
wow.
how smooth it is.
Wow.
Um, So it's shocking how smooth it is. And so I got the download for my Model Y, and it was sitting there, and I'm like, well, it'd be really cool if I could test the old version versus the new version and scientifically test it. So it's not
Uh-huh.
just Bradford saying smooth, smooth, smooth. It's actually studying the G forces in the car.
Hmm.
So um it just it goes a little slower in the roundabouts. It takes better angles, and you barely feel like it's gone through a roundabout once it's gone through.
Mhm.
So, what I want to do is test a before and after on the exact same car. Unfortunately, yesterday, my car just decided to update at 7 p.m., even though I didn't schedule it. So I can't do that, but um, tonight, we're not going to measure tonight, but we're Matt Smith is down for our annual meeting with Halter Ferguson and rebellionaire.com, and we're going to test 12.5 on a Model X with hardware 4, on a Model Y with hardware 4, and also a Model Y with hardware 3.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna do a couple short loops and just see what we notice right away. But later on, I'm gonna find a time late at night where I can test it, where we can just get the exact same situation where it's not reacting to traffic, same lighting condition,
Right.
and see how it drives differently. And like have an actual recording of the G forces. So like the G forces that are exerting on your body and your turns in the front and the back, like that's crucial to comfort for
Sure.
passengers
Sure.
in a robotaxi.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's why this matters.
Right.
People when they hop in a robotaxi, some people might be aggressive. They might want that cabbie that goes a little crazy, that's whipping around, but most people I think like don't want that kind of experience. They want a smoother ride.
Yes. It gives you things to talk about, in the
Mhm.
future, if you have that Gabby. I've had a
Yeah.
couple of those rides where it's given me plenty of things to talk about when I'm talking about trips, or Italy, for instance, comes to mind, but I'll save that for another day.
Yeah, and before we go to Nvidia, there's another topic I do want to hit.
Oh, okay. But on this update, then we will be
Uh-huh.
obviously looking for this on X. I'm sure you'll be updating. I'm assuming you'll be doing a Rebellionaire video on this at some point. Will that be
Yeah.
likely? All right.
We hope to record tonight, just our loops, and I'd say 2 weeks at the worst, and not Elon 2 weeks, like real 2 weeks. We'll look to get those measurements out, and I'm gonna use like Chat GPT to help me,
Oh,
go through the data
yeah.
that comes, because literally this data is probably going to be like every 10th of a second or faster,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's going to be 10-minute rides, so there's going to be like
The data.
70 to 100 seconds, or I don't know, whatever it is. It's going to be a lot of observations. um so it'd be a lot of data to go through, and so we'll look to get that out. I think it'd be cool just to show how different it is. Obviously I think the Model Y handles the best.
Mhm.
um, so I'm curious, like how the Model X does.
Right.
But I'm curious how the hardware 4 Model Y does versus the hardware 4 Model X, as far as like the G forces, and then I'm curious how the hardware 3 Model Y does.
So there's been quite a few articles, so quite a few people posting on X today about the Model Y. I'm sorry, about the hardware 3
Mhm.
updates, and they haven't all been that great. Have you been able to drive yours much yet with the hardware 3?
I did last night. Um, I think it was last night, or no, maybe it's the night before. It did pretty well. I felt like it was less smooth.
Mhm.
And I drove at night. One of the weird things it did that I haven't had happen to me in a very long time is I was in a roundabout. There were no other cars in the roundabout or within my sight, and the car just slowly came to a stop in the middle of the roundabout. Um, so it's like it was a bit shocking to me. So
Yeah,
I disengaged. I gave a voice note to let Tesla know that it happened, and then
yeah,
I
yeah.
re-engaged and went on my way.
That
Uh,
was an odd one.
it was a little weird. It wasn't safety critical, but
Yeah, yeah,
I might call that one a critical disengagement, because the
yeah.
car did come to a stop. I
Right,
would have
right.
needed to say, "Hey, get the car going again, Tesla. Let's go."
All right. Well, I know you said you had something else before we go to Nvidia.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the Tesla flippening. So this is a surprise to us. Um, so Gerber Kawasaki, they're another advisor, and they have 6 times the assets of Halter Ferguson Financial, which is, my firm. And what happened as of June 30th is the number of shares that clients at Gerber Kawasaki had under management shrank to under 300,000. And our number of shares grew to over 300,000. So despite being at the end of last year being less than 6 times the size of Gerber Kawasaki, our amount of Tesla shares grew.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. Ross Gerber hasn't been like secret about his dislike for what Elon's doing with X, what Elon's talking about politically, his desire to get on the board of X, his criticism about the vote that happened around the annual shareholders meeting, and also saying that he was selling X, and I think he even said he might have been telling clients to sell or advising them to sell, and he did this during the second quarter, while it was under 200 a share.
Yeah.
So I'm not really surprised. The decline could be two things. So they're doing math. It could be clients leaving who had Tesla shares, but it also could have been a net sales of clients at that firm.
Right.
What's surprising me is how quickly it happened after we started Rebellionaire. I thought it'd take a few years.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good for you guys. And of course, we still count you among the bulls.
Yeah. I don't think though that Tesla is going to invite us to any events, but I hope that would change. But
maybe
I don't think Ross is on their list anymore, though.
But maybe you'll get invited to participate in some rounds, because I noticed that Gerber Kawasaki was one of the companies that owned shares in X and XAI, so they were on that list of 200 or whatever, however many it was that was published last week. So maybe you'll be a potential you'll get the call.
Maybe that's why Ross is upset.
Maybe
the valuation on Twitter and now X has come down, pretty substantially from the purchase price. So
Ryan Wong made a very strong case for the fact that both of them will be worth 80 billion in the very short term. Each.
Yeah, I saw some of that. Yeah.
That was a very compelling case. All right. So my take on Nvidia right now, let me tell you my take, and then I'll let you have some fun with it. All right, my take is, and by the way, this is coming from my business consulting brain. All right. I've been consulted with 400 companies over the last 16 years, and I'm a very quick study. I can look at financial statements, and I really consider myself to be very good at seeing the holes and seeing the problems. And so I haven't done a huge long study of Nvidia. This is kind of a first look for me. And I'm just curious to see what you think. So I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, you can project their sales and profits pretty easily. And I don't see any big thing that's going to cause their sales to all of a sudden go up a lot more than what they're showing. But of course, you can always have a slowdown. But in order to be able to get more chips from Taiwan or even from Samsung or somebody else, in order to get enough raw materials to be able to grow themselves much faster than this, it doesn't seem to be in the cards. They don't have a big new category. They talked about sovereign wealth, countries that they might get involved with, but they talked about that being a 2 billion business total. So I'm trying to find a business that would cause their sales to go up. Then I look at their margins. It's about once in a billion years that somebody has a 75% margin company. It just doesn't come along every day. So my expectation would be, even as they grow, they're more likely, as they add products and services, they're more likely to have parts of the company that'll be less than 75% margin. And so those will start to reduce their overall margins as they grow. So with those things in mind, it would make sense to me that this kind of PE that they have now would be realistic, and that they're not likely to go much higher than this PE without some kind of optionality on some new big deal that might be in the works. So there's my quick analysis.
So right now, Yahoo might be a little behind, but the PE on Nvidia is 55.
Uh-huh.
And but if you take their latest quarter and annualize it, let me see here. They did in basic, and this is GAAP, so this is not non-GAAP. They did 68 cents. And if you annualize that, so multiply it by 4,
Yeah.
you get $2.8.
Okay.
So that's under a 50 PE. I don't know if it's quite a 40 PE. And that's looking forward, because earnings wise, this quarter is going to be the worst quarter over the next 4 quarters. So like, I'm highly confident
That they'll continue to
that
grow it.
it'll be at least as good as this quarter,
Right.
moving forward, at least for the next 4 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
So I would agree with you, like a forward PE of about 40 is around fair for Nvidia. But to address your other points, so sales, what people may not know is there's this huge supply that Nvidia is going to get from Taiwan Semi toward the end of this year, of their product, and it's called chip on wafer on substrate, COWOS.
Okay.
And so you can find this in the media on how their supply is going to double or triple. And this is in some of the conference calls.
Wow.
So there's the potential to have that supply at least double next year. It's a question, how long does it take to ramp up? But the ramps have been pretty strong and forceful. So in next year, I actually would not be surprised if they came close to doubling what they end up doing this year.
Okay. At these
For
margins.
that reason.
At
But
these
like
margins?
margin should come down some because you're doubling supply.
Right. Right.
The demand is insatiable right
Right.
now.
Right.
But there's always the risk that you could have more supply than demand, and you may need, for margins to come down a bit. So it's a great business.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
We saw the stock come down off of, great record-breaking earnings.
Right.
And on top of that, they mentioned that their buyback increased from 7.5 billion remaining to an additional 50 billion.
Yes.
An
Yes.
authorized buyback of their
Yes.
shares.
Yes.
So they expect to have a lot of cash. I believe their cash flow from this past quarter was more than 14 billion.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So like the fundamentals of the business are going great. We have a valuation for Nvidia and where we think it could go to. And I'm not prepared to talk about that today, but I think that
it's higher than we are now.
It's higher than we are now. But I'll say this, I think it would be hard for Nvidia stock to like quadruple over the next 3 years. But we do see like a lesser version of that, and
Yes.
Maybe a little less than
There's
a
a
triple.
number less than 400%.
It might be less than a triple too. So
Okay.
we think Nvidia is going to do well. There's also a lot of execution risk.
Sure.
There were some issues with their latest chip,
Right.
but basically they communicated that they solved that.
Yeah, that sounded to me like that was put to bed.
Yeah, so
In their mind, at least.
so they solved it, and they're already sampling the new version of it, and in over 100 designs or something like that. It's really wild, this whole business. And what's amazing to me that Jensen talked about is you think about Tesla buying like 50,000 of these, and Elon said like getting them all on the same page is like trying to make a symphony.
Yes.
And what he means by that is if one player in the symphony is out of sync, like it can screw the whole thing up.
Yes. Yes.
You don't want someone out of sync.
Right.
And it's a really hard task to get them all working together. And what's amazing to me, what Jensen said on the call was you have all these different customers and all these different suppliers where these the OEMs, and he also said ODMs, and they they put it into a package, but maybe the ODMs like put it into the server racks or whatever. I'm not sure what the ODM is, but there's all these different approaches, but like ultimately they're getting them all to all work together in this big symphony. And what's exciting to me is Tesla is about to turn on Cortex at Giga Texas,
Right.
where it's 50,000 of these, I think.
Yeah.
And every time that Tesla's compute has greatly increased, like they've immediately delivered in spades with like a big update, a big increase in capability. So I'm excited that might continue again.
Yes, that would be fantastic. So we talk a lot on this channel about the fact that Tesla has the best embodied capability or future prospect, I guess you'd call it, in terms of AI. Of course, we have the two biggest prospects, period, in terms of a company ever, in Robotaxi and Optimus, but just in the embodied AI space. But people are now talking a lot about the Apple announcement, which got a lot of announcements in these next 2 weeks, a lot of stuff going on I want to talk about, but one of those would be the Apple announcement. They're saying, they'll be incorporating AI into this next announcement. Do you have theories or thoughts or any feelings about Apple's next move?
So I'm not holding my breath. You just saw me take a breath. I worry that it's more incrementalism. We haven't yet gotten the AI implemented into the iPhone 15. It sounds like we're getting an iPhone 16.
Yeah.
So my concern is it's just more incrementalism where we get the AI in the iPhone 16 as well. So I'm not super excited. I hope they do more with AI. I'm on a Mac right now. I'm on a MacBook Pro. I do want to say one thing really quick though. I think one reason Nvidia stock was down is I think there's a lot of short-term traders, gamblers, momentum people that are in Nvidia. That's my opinion. And their intention was to trim after earnings, almost like regardless. There's all these leverage products in Nvidia where people are playing the levered ETFs.
Yeah, okay. I would go along with that as well. So back on the subject of embodied, Zillow, their president, who today became their CEO, replacing the founder. Zillow, for those of you who don't know out there, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but Zillow is the leading app with regard to real estate transactions, with our real estate information, I guess you would call it. They want to get in the transaction business, and they're saying that they are seeing a method for incorporating AI into the Zillow app, creating a smoother end-to-end transaction within the real estate space. As you may know, I've written a couple of books on real estate. A couple of my best clients are big time real estate people. And I could imagine so much opportunity for disruption there because the process is so cumbersome and so horrible. But that would be maybe a great example of where maybe we'll start to see some big time, embodied examples.
Yeah, I would agree that we need to automate more things, and I think AI can help automate those things. So yeah, AI can help you write code to automate. It can help you identify the opportunities on like how do you triangulate the data in order to automate this thing that you've been doing manually. Maybe you have to do this legally, but like having to sign your name 89 times is pretty ridiculous for one. But I think there's a ton of opportunity in real estate with AI, with data, where you could collect all this data locally about price changes and transactions, and then use either machine learning or a neural network to try and identify opportunities or patterns or something that's out of the ordinary. AI is great for dealing with big data.
Right. Tesla keeps trying to make a move. The stock I'm talking about, it keeps trying, gets up, then it gets slapped back down. Of course, it is the end of summer. We talked about that a minute ago, so that could have something to do with it. But we've got 2025 coming up really fast now. I mean, we're going into September now. So 2025 is not that far away. Huge opportunities in Tesla, whether it's a model, the Juniper, whether it's the Model 2.5, whether it's full self-driving, being better and better, whether it's robotaxi. With energy increase, we have the new company starting to cover Tesla this morning with a buy, partially because of energy. We have all this taking place, and yet we can't even get back to the 260 that we were earlier this year, or the 300 that we were the middle of last year. And you say?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the market. They want to see evidence in the earnings. One reason why Nvidia has done so well is they have the earnings and they have the buyback. Apple, they don't really have much growth in earnings, as I'm aware, but they do have the buyback. And these things Tesla doesn't have. So I think investors, casual people out there, they don't know how good full self-driving is. They don't know how good the upgraded Model 3 is. And that, transferring that to the best-selling vehicle on the planet, which is the Model Y, is going to be a really big deal. So I think it's just a lack of awareness. And so, if people are kind of confused about Tesla, for them to not take action makes sense to me. When you're confused or overwhelmed, we all tend to procrastinate.
There you go. So speaking of products, though, you've had your Cybertruck for quite a while now. So talk to me about, because there was a big nasty article this morning. I even hate to mention it again because it was such a hack job. I mean, it wasn't even a good job, of trying to destroy Cybertruck. But what's your feeling after
the article's pretending that Tesla's delivering all these Cybertrucks that just like suddenly stop working in 3 days.
Exactly.
It's just not true. Maybe that's happened for 1 or 2 people.
It was an embarrassment. The article's an embarrassment. It really wasn't good.
It's ridiculous. I've had a Cybertruck since March 30th.
Wow, that long. Look at that. 5 months. Wow. Okay.
It does great. I love it. There's more and more Cybertrucks in my area. I just tweeted out a really cool wrap job where someone took the Cyber Beast and like really highlighted that on the wrap with like this really cool sticker. We also saw right after our team meeting, this is a Cybertruck that was wrapped in like a strong yellow.
Ah,
almost like a warning sign yellow.
all
It
right.
was pretty wild to see. So, um, I think Cybertruck's doing fine. They haven't lowered the price yet, so
Yep,
like
yep,
the demand's still there at 100,000.
right.
They may need to lower the price soon,
Yeah,
but the demand's there. And if people really had that bad of an experience, these owners would be pounding the
yeah,
used car market
no kidding.
with their Cybertruck. They go to Tesla and say, "Hey, do you want to buy this?
Yep.
Because you have to." But then Tesla says no. Then they go and sell it used, and people aren't selling their Cybertrucks. They're not abandoning it, and for the most part, they're not complaining. There's, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen to a dozen people that have had, some bad Cybertrucks. Who cares?
What about your own personal experience? You've had lots of cars in your life and you have a lot of Teslas. What do you think about the Cybertruck after 5 months?
It's my second favorite
Your
Tesla.
second favorite. Okay.
Yeah. The Model X Plaid and how it drives. The Model X Plaid drives much better. I'd say the Cybertruck is more fun and it's more smooth for passengers to ride in, but it's heavier, so it's got more
Yeah,
sway.
yeah.
It rides higher, so it might tilt a little more. So it's just a different vehicle, a different offering, but it's fun and it's useful. And so I love the Cybertruck.
Okay. All
And
right.
it
Let's see.
I'll say it drives like a Tesla.
It
It's
drives like a Tesla.
fast,
Yeah, yeah.
quiet, and quick.
On the market overall, are the economy. Let's talk about the economy first. The numbers coming in from June and July, the last week and a half, have been pretty good. They've been, at least in hindsight, business might have been a little stronger than many might have thought, including me. I could still think the recession started in June, but we'll find out if I turn out to be right about that. But housing is still not great. Retail, definitely not great. Manufacturing, horrible. Um, do we scrape by? Does the are we going to have a recession here? What are you? Have you changed your mind on this at all?
It's possible that we scrape by without a recession, but there's just so many things that have lined up that I wouldn't be surprised by it. I just think people should be ready for it to be announced that, oh, we entered a recession in the second quarter, in the third quarter, and not to be surprised by it. There's been a lot of job losses.
Yeah.
Um, when you back out government hiring, like Larry has pointed out, I think we're down, I don't know, 1.8 million jobs or over a million jobs over the last year.
Mhm.
Um, and that's not a positive.
Right. Exactly. Um, so the market is pretty unlikely to be shocked by the PCE number tomorrow, because my understanding and even my attempts at doing the math, you can almost get to the PCE numbers with the combination of PPI and CPI. But the next week we get the unemployment numbers, or the employment numbers, whichever way you want to look at it. Are you thinking we'll see a shock there, or do you think that'll be flat or down? Do you have any sense of where you think it happens next week?
I don't know what the trigger is going to be. Um, I couldn't tell you. Uh, Generally, I haven't heard the best things as far as jobs, but yeah, I've been pretty deep to my research. But I have heard about some people losing jobs.
Yeah, okay. So with no real, I don't think there'll be a surprise tomorrow. I really don't think there'll be a surprise next Friday either. So with that, if we have no surprises, we're going to get that 25 rate cut the following week, right? 25 basis points
Yeah,
or
why would it be 25 though?
25 basis points?
Why not 50?
Oh, you think they might start off high, huh? Go with the 50th from the beginning?
When they raised, did they just do 25 at a time?
Boy, I don't remember. I think it was I think it was Nick who had earlier thought they might do a 50 because it was kind of an emergency, but then all of a sudden things have smoothed out. The numbers have been better than expected. So he actually backed off and thinks it'll be 25.
I
So
guess if they did 50, then people would start to worry more.
that's one of the problems. That's one of the problems. Yeah. Oh, it must be an emergency. So,
Yeah, the sentiment it could cause might be bad.
right. All right. Well, so we'll see what happens there. Market. This is your specialization now. Market to me seems stretched again. I feel like even though we had one 10% pullback, 20% for the NASDAQ, 10% for the rest, that may not have been enough. We may need another one. And I was thinking that, okay, I'll leave that for the last thing. Let's come back. Do you think we get another pullback before the end of the year?
Yeah, so the off of the high, the NASDAQ is down 6% now.
Okay.
Compared to the high it reached on July 8th. And so that was the high. And then the SPY, the S&P 500. I know you all can't see my screen, but I'm just kind of telling you what I'm seeing. The S&P 500 peaked out July 16 and is only 1% lower than that. So like if things are bad, go ahead.
And the Dow is all-time highs again today.
Okay. So if we are going to have a recession, I feel like that's complacency, or the market's telling us that it's a short recession. So maybe that's possible too. But I feel like it's a bit of complacency, and most companies that Matt and I look at, we don't understand the valuation. We think they're a bit stretched.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of where we are.
Yeah. Okay. So you could imagine, and quite frankly, a 10 or 20% pullback right now wouldn't be that like horrific, and because people have made so much money in the last 2 years on the market that a 10 or 20% would almost be like, oh well, I had to give back a little. As I remember years ago, just before 2008, and my one property had barely crossed the $1 million mark for the first time. And I said to friends of mine, if it drops 20%, I'm good. Unfortunately, it dropped 50%.
Ouch.
Well, and now of course it's come back triple, but it was like, if you've already gone up that much, taking a little haircut, 10 or 20% is not really that significant. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a 10 or 20% before the end of the year. I also do expect it though to bounce back, even in a Harris administration, even if Harris wins. I think it'll bounce.
Yeah, because that would mean that if Harris wins, this is just my opinion, like I think in general people are gonna know what to expect.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of talk about, unrealized gain tax and all that. But I don't think it's realistic that those would pass. And I think it's a bit damning that when I tweeted about the unrealized gain tax, and there were other people who did, a lot of people on the left who were kind of countering in the comments and the replies, they would say, well, there's no chance that would pass the House and Senate. There's no chance it would pass. And that's a signal that the policy is a bit extreme.
That has been kind of not just on that policy. It's the things that she's been reversing on have also been meeting that same response from her followers, the people that who are believing her. Well, that's what she says, but that'll never pass. I mean, so what? This is a little bit confusing to me. I've never seen that response before.
Yeah, so generally when you have someone that you're voting for president, and I'm not sure if I'm going to vote, so
interesting.
Not sure who I would vote for, but generally you want to be excited about those policies and not be like, well, those would never pass.
Yeah.
People won't go for that.
So you said you don't know who you're going to vote for, but generally speaking, up until a couple of weeks ago, there was a sense that, if the Republican wins, that's usually good for business. Cuts in regulations, cuts in taxes. Democrats win, more regulations and maybe raising taxes. And so there was the Trump bump, they called it. Now we've got kind of a flat situation. The betting market and the polls both kind of flat, really tied. I mean, it's like this. You couldn't be more tied if they tried. We've got a debate coming up, and it could be.
We got an interview that might be happening tonight, or
The interview should be on in an hour and it should be on at 6 o'clock Eastern. Okay, that's the time I believe it's supposed.
Right.
Is it 6 o'clock Eastern or 6 o'clock California? I'm not sure. I take that back. It is going to be on tonight. The last we heard, it's going to only be 18 minutes long.
Okay.
And that the Harris campaign said that they didn't want the transcript to be revealed or passed out. Only the 18 minutes, sounding as if some of it was cut. So this does not sound good.
Wow.
If this turns out to be true, this would not be good for the Harris campaign. But
I wonder if CNN is going to report on that.
CNN is the channel, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, beyond carrying the interview,
beyond carrying the
actually going to report on what was cut. Like, why do they have editorial control over the interview?
You got your guess is as good as mine on that one. I can't tell you. My question was going to be on the debate. Trump has been in dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of debates, and he's only lost, I think, one to Biden, the first debate, I think, of the 2016. I can't remember now, but he lost one debate. Other than that, he hasn't lost any of these debates. She is not necessarily considered to be the greatest debater. If this is an overwhelming Trump win, or if there's a surprise and she somehow does pull it off, do you think either one of those impacts the market? I'm not asking for political reasons. Do you think the market gets a reaction to that?
I think it could. There could be a reaction. Yeah.
Okay. You're not gonna. That's all you're gonna.
People tend to get charged around this time, so I have clients who will threaten to move to another country, or they'll ask me if they should sell all their stocks. And I tend to think in general it's a little bit overplayed, and we shouldn't let politics drive our investments.
Yeah.
If each party, they say, well, if you don't vote this way, this is existential, like slippery slope. If you don't vote this way, this is going to be the end of America.
Right.
And if we're living in a destroyed America, because the media's told us, for at least 24 years, if not longer, if you don't vote the way you should, and both sides say this.
Yeah. True.
If this is a destroyed America, then I'll take it. Maybe I'm spoiled. Maybe I live in a bubble, but
well, you definitely do. All right. Thank you, Bradford, as always, for joining me. We are going to go ahead and let you go, and then we're going to go over these numbers real quick.
Awesome.
And so till we see you next Thursday, and good luck with that test. We'll be looking forward to checking it out on Rebellion Air someplace.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye for now. All right. So the market today, as all of you probably already know, but we go over these anyway, just in case you want to hear it from me. We've got the Dow having a screaming good day, up 243, as I mentioned, all-time high, while the NASDAQ was down 39. The S&P was down, well, call it basically unchanged, 0.22 for the day. That would be as close to unchanged as you can get almost. Tesla ended up 53 cents after being up quite a bit earlier. I think it was up $6 or $7 at one point. And then the rest of the Magnificent Seven was mixed, but mostly up, but not nearly as much as it had been. There was as we mentioned earlier, around 2:30, everything came crashing down, all pretty much simultaneously. Some people thought Nvidia led on that, but they didn't. They were actually late. They kind of were following that crunch. Percentage-wise, we had the Dow up 0.59, NASDAQ down 0.23, and S&P literally on this little screen of mine says 0.00. The Cathie Woods were all actually up by the end of the day, not all of them even participating in that big slide at the end. All right, more importantly, let's go in and take a look at what happened with what's happening right now, in particular with the bonds. The bonds basically unchanged in the pre-market, and the 10-year down 0.2 of a basis point, and the 2-year back up 0.9 of a basis point. So we have that now at 867 and 33. We've got that back up to 4 basis point difference. It had dropped down to 2.9 at one point to date. I'm not sure that was the lowest, but it was right around the lowest for the day. And the 2-month basically unchanged now at 5.212, which is still about 137 basis points higher. So then we go to the oils, and the oil had been bouncing around a lot. We've got Texas Intermediate back down to 75, 76. Brent has stayed under 80, and Texas Intermediate is down 15 cents, so pretty close to unchanged. Natural gas up 0.19% in the pre-market, 2141. You've got gold down a little bit, but right kind of in the middle of where it has recently been, 2,552. Silver up down 0.66%, back down under $30, and copper right around where it's been recently, at least $4.21, down 0.25. The dollar, it seems like every day it's this way. So one way or the other, up against the euro, very little, very small move, 0.02. Same difference, 0.02 down, actually 0.03 just changed against the yen. The Bitcoin has been all over the place recently, but staying under 60 right now at 59,371, up 127 in the pre-market. Equities, almost hardly any change here at all. The Dow 0.02% up, S&P 0.11%, 6.25, and the NASDAQ the most up at 41.75 up. That's a 0.22% up after being down so strong today. So a little bit of a reaction there, the NASDAQ picking back up some of that loss. Okay, last thing, we do need to come back and tell you what Tesla did in the after hours. It ended up at up 0.47. So I should have done that a little differently. Please bear with me. Up 96 cents in the after hours. So we could imagine a situation tomorrow based on this, if the trends continue. Now, tomorrow's going to be such a light trading day. So it's common, and we got the PCE, which there could still be a surprise. Believe me, it's not always 100%. Plus, one of the things that they take a look at is what people spent. How much is their spending going up, earning, and that'll be part of tomorrow. And there's also a consumer confidence number out tomorrow. That might be interesting. So all those things with a light trading day, sometimes you can get a lot of volatility. All right, so we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow, morning, noon, and night. Oh, by the way, if you would love to see something extremely cool, you want to see what Cern and I did earlier today, I'll put the card right there. You want to go back and check that out. We talked also a lot about Nvidia and the relationship with Tesla, and I think that's an important thing that we need to keep in mind. So with all of that said, it has been great talking to you.